Hello everyone, thanks for joining me in this new video, and today I would like to recreate with you this landing page design for an interior designer studio. It's a design I found on Dribbble. It's by Iced Matcha Latte. Thank you for this design, and it's quite interesting because as you can see there are light and dark sections in this design, and you will see there's also a little tricky thing with the menu where I think the idea is to have the text bolded on hover. And just before we start, let's have a look at the target result to achieve with Oxygen and OxyProps. This is our actual test website. We have this menu with this hover effect for the text, where the text is bold, this hero section, this quote section here, and this dark section with those links that from the design I imagined having that kind of hover effect. And I just, when it's not hovered, outlined it to make sure it's more visible. And of course, as we are using OxyProps color scheme system, by adding the light and dark mode toggle and without changing anything else, we can switch and we have the dark version of the same site. The light part is now dark, the button and link colors have been adjusted, and this dark section is now a light one and still with this hover effect. Does it sound interesting? So let's jump into Oxygen and see how we can recreate this design with OxyProps. Let's start by creating our navigation. I will open the structure panel here and will insert a header builder. I will add my logo. My logo is an SVG, and as I want to style my SVG, I will not insert it as an image, but I will insert it as code in a code block. I have my SVG code. It's coming from Logo Ipsum. Just to let you know, I remove all inline style from this code so I can manipulate it. And I made sure that the width is set to 100% so I can scale it using Oxygen settings. I apply code. We now have my logo, and I want to define its color. So I will use the class fill text1 because in this design the logo uses the text color and it's a little big, so I will also resize it. And as I set the width to 100%, I can resize it using the code block sizing panel. So I want a width of a size of 7. While we are here, I will add padding on top and bottom of my header. I select my header row and I want to make sure that I add padding only on top and bottom, not on left and right. This will be handled by Oxygen, so I will add a block padding by using the class O-pad-BL for block and then the desired size. If I select this one, by default it will use a size fluid 2 for the padding. If I don't want for any reason to use the fluid version, I can use the fixed one, and in this case the class will be O-pad-BL-fixed-2, but I want the fluid one, and we have our block padding top and bottom. And as this is your site logo, you would certainly want to make it a link to the home page. So I select my code block, I click on the pencil here, and I will wrap with a div, and I will make this div a link. So now it's a link wrapper. As the link URL, I will define a /. Next, let's build our menu here. There are two parts. So let's start with the first one. So let's first rename it as our site logo. And now let's add a div and drag this div to the row center. I won't use a built-in Oxygen menu. We will build a menu from scratch. We won't build the mobile version because that's not the purpose of this video, but we will focus on the desktop one. So this one will be our main nav, and I will give it a tag of nav, and inside this nav I will add a text link. But this may not be the best structure for a navigation. So before adding more links and styling them, let's add a div. So I will wrap my text link in a div. This one will be a li, and I will give it a tag. And as you can see, you have no li tag in the drop down, so I will add a custom tag of li. You see that our normalized did add a list styling, so it's now recognized as an actual li tag. And my li, I will wrap it in another div. This one will be my UL, and as you can guess, I will give it a tag of UL. So we now have the following structure: our main nav with an unordered list, a list item, and inside my list item I have a text link. Before we continue, let's give this element some classes. This one will be my AS. I like to prefix all classes with AS, that will be for Architecture Studio. I like to do that because it's easier afterward to differentiate between AS prefixed classes, which are the custom ones I created, the O-something classes that are the OxyProps framework classes. And even if I use it together with another framework or another plugin that brings additional class, let's say I would want for some reason to use it together with OxyNinja core classes are prefixed with a C, it would be also easy to differentiate between the different classes. So let's prefix it and say this is the AS nav. And then I will have the AS nav __ UL. I will have here the AS -nav __ li, and then the AS -nav __ link. I use UL, li, and link, but name it whatever makes sense for you. I will start styling them. So from my UL, I want to remove the default padding. So I make sure I have my class selected. I go to advanced size and spacing, and I will set the left padding to unset, if I can spell it right. Perfect. Now let's go to my li, and as there are no Oxygen properties to remove the list style, I will go to the custom CSS and declare a list style of none. And now I can duplicate my li, and you will see that it's not duplicating in the way we want it. So let's go back to our UL, the class, make it an horizontal direction flexbox, and now I want to define spacing between my nav links, so I will add a gap using size fluid 4. Perfect. Now I can go ahead and modify my links. As the URL, we will have simply a hash for now. We'll have here the home. This one will be what we do, also with a hash. And this one will be our work, a dash. And I'm still on my navlink class. I will style the text. I want it capitalized, and I want my text color to be the text color. So it will be a text one. My hover color will also be a text one. And now I would like to give my text links this bold effect on hover. And that's a bit tricky, because if I go to my class and hover, and that I change the font weight to be bold, and I save. Let's go and have a look at the front end. And that's what happens. You notice that when the text on hover is bold, its dimension changes, and this creates a layout shift for the other link. And that's not what we want. So we need to find another solution. And one of the possible solutions was discussed in the OxyProps Discord community and comes from this solution that can be found on Stack Overflow. And this comes from many contributors. You can see Alex Alice, Torgers, and the last one is by Adam Katz. And it's about applying a text shadow. And back in Oxygen, I will remove this font weight. And in the element custom CSS panel, that's an additional feature of OxyProps, you can right click and you get this menu where you can access the framework custom properties that are not available. To be exact, that's not that they are not available, but there are no input fields in Oxygen default properties panels to insert those custom properties. So shadows, shadow weights, that's the one that we are interested in, animations, easings. So this can be inserted directly in the element custom CSS. So for our navlink, I want to use a shadow weight. That's not an actual font weight. That's achieved by using text shadow, a very specific text shadow. And I will give it a shadow of 6, for example. And it's very tiny here, but if I collapse the editor, you can see that it's now bold. And let's have a look at the front end, refresh. And here we are. We now have this bold text effect on hover, but as you can see, we don't have any layout shift. Good. Next, let's build our right part of the menu here. So what I will do is duplicate this nav, and I will drag it in the row right area and drag it to my row right. Okay. So just to warn you, what I just did is not good for accessibility reasons, because now we have two navs. So in a real case, we would want to go and define two different navigation areas with proper area labels for accessibility reasons. But this is out of the scope of this video, so I will keep it like this for now. So in this second nav, I have two nav links. This one will be about us. This one will be get in touch. And this second one, I want to style it as a button, so I will remove my class here, and I will create a new one, ASNav button or BTN, for example. And I want it to have a text color of surface 4, a hover color of surface 1. I want a background of text 1, and on the hover state, I want a background of text 2. I also want to add some padding. I want padding 1 for top, padding 1 for bottom, and a 3 for left and right. I want to style my typography. I want a font weight of 200. I want it capitalized. Perfect. Let's save and have a look at this button on the front end. And that's it. We have our hover effect for the button and for the text links. And back to the builder, I can collapse my header builder. And now let's work on the section, the hero section. So let's add a section. In this section, we will have a heading, we will have a text, then we will have a div, and in this div, we will have two text links. Okay, the heading, the text, and the two text links. So let's start with this, and we will take care of the image later. My H1 is bold, and I would like to reduce the font weight to stick to the design. So there are two options. First option would be to change the font weight on every H1, and I will of course change the default font weight in the global styles, but I could also go for a custom class. So let's create classes for all of these elements. My section will be a AS hero, then I have a AS hero heading, a AS hero text, AS hero CTA, and AS hero BTN, and the last one will be AS hero link. So let's start with my heading. I want it to be a font size of 3, but actually I want it to be very big for my hero section, so I will add a multiplier, and I will have a multiplier of ×2. Very big. Okay, I want a moderate font weight. Perfect. The text will be design your home with passion. And as this heading is much too wide, let's reduce its width. So I will set a width of 100%. So I will go to percentage full and a max width. And I will go for the reading width. I want it very small. I want a custom one. I will choose 10. That's 10 ch, 10 character high. And maybe it will be better if I spell that properly. Maybe let's compare it to the initial design. Yes, maybe I want to reduce the line height. And let's go for a line height of 0. Save. Before we continue, let's add some spacing to this section. So I'm on my section, I want it to be vertical, that's default, but I will specify it anyway, and I will add a gap of 4. Let's take care of this text next. So I want the font weight to be at 200, I want the font size to be 2, I will reduce the width, and let's see, let's try a content 1. That's not enough. The content 2, and with content 2 we have an orphan, so maybe 30 ch. Okay, that's good. That leaves plenty of room for our pictures. Let's reduce the line height. Larger one. Now let's take care of our links. So first, my CTA container will be a horizontal flex box with a gap of 4 to be consistent. My first link will be a button, So let's start with this one, that will be easy. I will leave the default text and others. I will make a hash for now as the link. I want the text to be capitalized and I want to add an after, and as a content I will use the French double quote, this one, and I will add some spacing. So I want a margin left of maybe a size 2. That's okay like this. Now let's style our button. So I could add the OBTN class as a starting point and then make only modifications in my second class, or I can make all my styling in my custom class here. It's up to you. Actually, it depends. If you will use this button a lot and you want to avoid adding 2 classes each time, it can be interesting to do the styling in a single class. And if you want to avoid the work of completely customizing the class and the fact that having 2 different classes, the main one and a modifier one, is not a problem for you, go for 2. In my case, I have only a few buttons, so I will go for the double class option, and I want square corners. So I will start with my borders and a border radius of 0. I will modify the text to CR portfolio. I want to make sure the text is capitalized. As you can see, I could type the text with capitalized letter and avoid applying this property. But in order to avoid typing mistakes, I want to make sure it's part of my class. And then I want a font weight of 200. I want to modify the padding. I will not touch default top and bottom padding, but I want to enlarge the left and right. So I will go for a size 3 on both sides. That's perfect. I can go to my container here and make sure I have a vertical alignment to middle. Okay, to be sure I know what's in my structure panel, I will call this the CTA. Perfect. One last thing before we go further. I think that my link color here compared to the design one is much lighter. It's the correct hue, but I want it darker. So by default, I did set the brand color and the link color for this design to be the teal color swatch, and the system automatically set brand and link colors for the light version and for the dark version. But maybe you want to tweak the preset colors to your liking, and that's something that is possible, and that's possible if you did activate the custom color scheme style sheet. Yeah, and in such a case you will have in your Oxygen style sheets an OxyProps folder, and inside of it an OxyProps theme style sheet. And this style sheet, where everything is commented, allows you to redefine the color schemes. So maybe yours will look different because I will work on it and try to make it even more readable and usable, but that's the way it works. So let's start by here going to our light version, because that's the one I want to modify, and I will remove the comment, and I want to act on my brand color for the light mode, and I want to act for the link color for the light mode. So I will reopen the comment from there and work only on this one that interests me. So that's the way the color scheme works. I have this CSS custom variable, brand light, and brand light is defined to user brand 5. That's user brand means the general color you chose. In my case, it's teal. And 5 is the, let's say, the color intensity from the range 0 to 10. So I want it to be darker, so I will set my brand light color to be the 7th intensity or strength of my selected color. I want to make sure that I also adjust the HSL version if I need to apply transparencies. And for the hover, usually I go with 2 increments difference. So I will choose 5, and I'll do the same for my links. So 7, 7, 5. And let's have a look. I'll collapse the editor, and you can see that now my brand color is much darker. Okay, maybe we could have gone one step further and maybe to an 8. But I will stick with the 7. By the way, this style sheet also allows you to redefine the scheme colors to something completely custom. Imagine you cannot find the exact nuance you want in the preset colors. You can come here, and for the example, we'll work on the link color, as this is the one used by our button here. So let's go and change our link light, and here we can use any CSS valid color definition. We can use an aquamarine, for example. Okay, that's not readable, but our links have changed to aquamarine. We can use a X code, and now it's a bright red. We can use HSL, for example, 215, decrease, 100% saturation, 50%, and we have this blue. This custom style sheet will allow you, if you wish to redefine any of the colors, and you can do that for the light, the dark, the dim, which is the radius contrast, and the colorful light and colorful dark modes. And if you do so, make sure that you only uncomment the ones that you actually want to redefine. So let's go back to our till and collapse the editor. Okay, I think we are done. Let's have a look at the front end, and that's what it looks like. Now let's add those images, starting with the one at the back, and we have several options. We could add it as a background image. Let's choose the ID, because I want only this specific section, and let's go and grab a background image, and we will choose this one, but I want it to be contained, I want it to no repeat, and I want a position of left. I could have used the context menu of left 100%. And here it is. This looks like what we want to achieve. So that's a way to go. But as I used a background image, and if this is important for my website, I will lose any SEO capabilities. So that's the first way to do it, but let's look for another one. So I will remove my background image, and actually I will delete any styles I did create. Okay. And another option would be to go for an absolutely positioned image. So first I will come back to my hero section. I will apply it to the class, because I can imagine that if I have other hero sections on other pages, I want something similar. And I'll go to layout and position my section relative. Let's save. And now coming back to my structure panel, I will add to my section an image. This image will be the same one, and on this image I want to set a class so I can use it later. So this will be my ASNav hero BG, and this will be absolutely positioned. This will have a height of 100%. This will be positioned at a right of 0, a top of 0. I will give it a Z index of -1, and here we are. I have my image positioned as if it was a background image, but now it can benefit from the SEO value of a classical image. Let's save. And now we need this image, so I will add another one. This one will be my AS hero. Let's call it bubble. It will also be absolutely positioned. I'll come back later. First I will resize it. I will give it a max width of, let's go for a size 15. Okay, let's grab the image from the library. It will be this one. And let's position it. So I go to layout, a position of absolute. I will go to 25%, so that's 1/4. Bottom. On the left 50, maybe a bit more. Let's go to 55. Okay, I want it fully rounded, so let's go to borders and a radius of round. And now there is this moon here, and we will use for that a drop shadow. So let's go to advanced effect, box shadow, and we will use our brand color for that, and with a horizontal offset of, let's say, 60 pixels for too much. Let's try with 30, that's okay. Let's save that and have a look at our front end. And here is our hero section. So let's continue and see what we need to do next. back to our reference, we have this section here with a quotation text, an image with a pill shape, and this button. So let's add a new section, and this section will be a grid. So grids use simple props that predefine the grid template column properties. And in our case, if the two columns of the grid had equal width, we would go with a grid 2, meaning it would be a display grid with a template column of 2 equal fractional units. But I think in our case, they are not exactly equal. The left one is a bit bigger. So I think we should go with a grid 3, 2. And here it is in my suggested classes. And I will add 2 divs. Here they are. So now let's add a gap between our divs, and let's go to the ID and add a gap, and let's try with a gap of 4. Maybe later we will need to enlarge it, but we will see later. On the right one, I will add a text, and on the left one, I'll add an image. Let's grab this one, and why not, I'll shape it with utility classes. So first I want a very wide aspect ratio, so let's go for O ultra wide. And I will also round the corners with the class O radius round. Let's insert our text. I will create a class for this one. It will have class of as-quote, and I'll define a font size of fluid 1, a font weight of 200, and what if I go to a size of fluid 2? Okay, let's reduce the line height a bit more to 0. Okay, and I want to create this left border, so I'll go to borders. I will be editing the left border. I want it to be my text 1 color with a width of a border 3, and it will be solid. And now I need to add some padding, so let's go to size and spacing and create a left padding of a size 2, and let's reduce a bit the font size. So we'll go to a font size 1, but as this is a bit small, I will multiply it by 1.5. Perfect. Now we need to align this, and as we are in a grid, we want all children divs to stretch to be of equal height. So I will go to the section and add a class of stretch. Here it is. So if we look at our div, here you can see now that it stretches, and now we want to center the text vertically. So this div will be a vertical with a vertical alignment to the middle. Now, and I really think we don't have enough gap here because we want this button, so we need more gap. So let's go back and change this gap to enlarge it. So I select the section, make sure I'm styling the ID, and I will replace my gap, and let's go for a gap of 6. And now I want to create my button. My button will be inside this div, and I will absolutely position it over my image. So my div will be position relative, and then I can add a new div, and as we want it to be a button, actually let's make it a link wrapper right now. My URL is only a hash, and I'll create a class as round btn. I'll give it a background color of brand. I want the borders to be round, and inside my div I will add the icon, and let's select an arrow, maybe linear icons. I'll select this one, the arrow right, and I will change the color to, I won't style directly, but I will use a CSS keyword of current color. Current color applies the color that's inherited from the CSS cascade. Okay, and now I can go back to my text link and continue styling it. So let's make sure we can see this icon, and we will give a color, and as I want it to be the same color as my background, it will be surface 1. And now we can see the icon appear. Let's add some padding. I will add a size width 2, and I want this on all sides. And now let's take care of the icon itself. It's a bit too big, so let's reduce the size to 25. And in our design, it was looking upright. So to recreate this, and maybe I will need a class here. So let's create AS round btn icon. And I will copy the styles I started to apply to the ID to my class and clear the ID. Okay, so now I'm styling my class and I want to add an effect. It will be a transform, and I want to add a rotate, and I want to rotate it 45 degrees counterclockwise, so that will be a minus 45. And to finish styling my button, I want to take care of the hover state. So the hover state will have background color of my brand hover. Back to original, I can add a transition of 0.3 seconds and a timing function. Let's go for ease in out of 3. Last, we want to position our button, so we'll position it absolutely. So let's go to layout, position absolute, and I want the top of my button to be 50% from the top of my container. So let's go to percentage half. I want the right to be 0 and I want it to be in front, so I will give it a layer of 1. And as you notice, that's not exactly what we want, because the point we just positioned is the corner, the top right corner. So to have our button completely in place, we need to add transform, translate, and we will translate of 50% text. So I can go like that. And you can see now that it is centered. And to finish positioning the center, we want, I'll go this way, but actually we don't want 50, we want a minus 50. So let's add a minus. And now we have exactly positioned the center of our button to the extremity of our pill. Okay, so it looks like we are close to finish, but look, we have an issue with the color of the icon on the hover mode. So let's fix this. On the button, we need to go to the hover state. Background color is set, but we need to go to typography and set the color. And let's keep our surface one. Let's save and have a look at the front end. And this is our new section with our button. So what's next? We now have this dark section, and to create it, we will add a new section. So I will collapse these ones, add a section. This section had 2 equal parts, so this will be a grid 2. So in our section, let's add divs. Here we are, 2 divs of equal width. In the first one, we will have a heading and a text. Our heading will be a design so unique it was created for you. This will be a H2, but I want it to be big as per our design. So let's go to a font size fluid 3 and even enlarge it with a 1.5 multiplier. I'll reduce the font weight to 500. Okay. And I will also reduce my line height. My text, it will be a text 2 for the color with a font size of size fluid 1. And here again, maybe bump it a little by 1.2. Perfect. And a font weight of 300. Let's add some gap. I could go directly to the section ID, or I can add a gap utility class. I go for a gap of 4, which has the same effect as defining a gap of a size 4. And here I want to create my list items. So let's add a div inside this div. Okay, let's grab it inside the div. Here it is. We will give it a class of AS list element, and this will have a width of 100%. Inside it we will have a first div, and in this div we will have a heading and a text. The heading will have a class of AS list element heading. As you can guess, this text will have a class of AS list element text. Our heading will be H3 of architecture. My text will be a bit of lorem sum. Too much, so let's remove some. Here we are. My text, I will limit the width to a more pleasant reading width, so it will have max width of content 2. Our container here will have a class, list element text plural. This will have a gap of 1. And now let's create our button. So we'll add a link wrapper. And let's have a look again at the shape of this button. It's a rounded one with a top left square corner with the arrow icon inside. So I will give it a class of AS leaf btn because it looks like a leaf for me. This have a background color of, and actually certainly that there's no background and it appears on hover. Okay, so I like to have the button slightly visible, so I will create some border. The border color will be, I want it to be my brand. Let's try my brand with a width of 1. It will be a solid one. I want it to be round, except for the top right, that will be 0, and we can see the shape of our button. And as expected, the border is a bit too much visible for me. So let's go back to our borders and we want to bring opacity. And to bring opacity, I will use a shortcut. And if I go, for example, for 50%, my brand, 50% here, I have something pre-filled that I can tweak exactly to my liking. So I will remove the color intensity because I want really to be my brand selection and not a specific intensity, and I will stick with 50% for now and have a look at the result. And maybe let's reduce even more the opacity. Let's try 20%. Inside my button I will add, actually I will go there and I will copy my icon because it's the exact same one. I will bring inside my link wrapper here. I will add padding to my button, the same, so it's padding of 2. Apply to all. I will make sure that my color is set to my text. Now let's stick with text 1. And now let's style the hover effect. So I will go to the hover state. In the hover state, my color will for now stick to text 1. My background will be my brand, and I will add also some transitions. So I will go to Effects, Transition, 0.3 is in out of 3. Here it is. And now let's take care of the positioning. For the positioning, we will select the container here, which is our list element, and our list element, we want it to be horizontal. We want it to have a middle vertical alignment, and as I want to push the button to the right, I will have a justify content of space between. Here it is. And let's have a look at the front end, and this is what it looks like. I don't like my border, I will modify it, and actually I will force bound 5, and now maybe it's a bit too transparent and I will go with 40%. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, now we can duplicate our list element. Within the container, we will add a gap. That's too much, a gap of 2. Installation, interior. Okay, and there you may think, but you just designed a light section, but the design was a dark one. Okay, that's absolutely not an issue, because when designing it, we use only logical colors. And what is a logical color? When I select from my context menu here, these are logical colors. What that means is that these colors are defined through a CSS custom property, and the value of this property is reassigned dynamically depending on the context, color scheme, specific element, whatever. If I had used, for example, a color from the color palette, that's completely different. Because if I set the grape 5 color, for example. And even if this color is defined through a property, that's not a logical one. So this means that this text, whatever the color scheme, will be grape 5. So those colors are responsive. And first thing I do, because for now this section has no background, so background is transparent, and I will add a specific background of surface 1. We cannot see any change, but the change will be visible when we add the class OInvert, and suddenly our section turns dark. And same thing happens with this text color here, and I will specify a color of text 2, and here we are. And now I can see that my button with the hover color set to text 1, that's not correct. I want it to be my background color on hover, so my text in normal state, but my background color on hover. So let's fix this. Go back to the hover state, and in my typography I will set my color not to be text 1 but to be surface 1, and here we are. So finally let's have a look to our front end, and that's very nice. We have our dark section with our buttons, this button too, and our hero section. The final touch is that I want this site to be responsive to my user light or dark preferences, and I want to allow him to choose which version he or she prefers. So one last thing, we will add a light and dark mode toggle to this nav. So let's go back to our header, and here I will duplicate this li. I will remove the text link in it, and I will pick up the OxyProps, and I will choose the custom one, light dark custom. Okay, the width is okay for me. I won't touch it, but I will change the colors to match my theme. So the light icon will be my text color, and in dark version I want it to be more subtle, so maybe I will choose it to be a surface 4 color. Let's save and have a final look at the front end. So before I touch anything, let's have a look at how responsive it is to user system preferences. Currently my system is set to light mode. Let's change it to dark mode, and the system adapts automatically. And what happens if our user chooses to switch, prefers light version? My system is set to dark, but now the website has saved the user preference, and next time he will visit, even if his system is dark, he will benefit from the light version because that's his choice. And everything works as expected. We have our hover effect with this shadow giving a bold effect to the text without layout shift. We have our button, our CTA, this button that works with the hover color. You can even see that our quotation mark with its left border has adapted to the dark mode, and our dark section is now the light one. And you can notice that our brand color that has been applied both to this button and this button is not the same intensity when it is in a light environment. This section is set now, as it is inverted, is set to be light, and our brand color uses a darker intensity in a light environment, and the same logical color, the brand color in a dark environment, uses a lighter intensity. One last thing, maybe you already have noticed that when I select an element, the selection highlight matches the brand color. That's the exact same color as our button color. And if I go to the dark part, it's the same. The selection color matches the brand color. And this brings this video to an end. I hope you enjoyed it and that you will develop your next masterpiece using Oxygen Builder together with OxyProps. And I see you in the next video.